Before the success stories, the progress, there was you. You who made a choice to grow, to inspire, to overcome your own challenges. At NASM, we're in service of your limitless potential, because when you keep growing, we all get stronger, and we'll never stop making your journey our mission. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified personal trainer.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this week on the Master Instructor Roundtable. I'm Marty Miller here with my co-host and fellow Master Instructor, Wendy Batts. Wendy, how's everything going?
It's great, Marty. How are you?
Good. Always glad to be here with you, but also all the amazing people that watch us online or listen to us wherever they check out their favorite podcast. So I'm excited for today's topic because I'm kind of surprised we didn't do this one before, because how many times have I talked about the art of personal training versus the science of personal training?
This is all you, Marty, because yes, there is, I think something when you think of a personal trainer, it really isn't always about what you know, because as everyone probably has seen, there are some trainers that are unbelievable and they get results. And then there's other trainers that look the part, but maybe don't have the background or the science or anything to support what they're doing with their clients. However, they have this ability to just hold on to this client. This client adores everything about him, and it's building that rapport, having that relationship. And I think that's one of the reasons when you said we were going to do this today, we can kind of bring it full circle. So I was glad you put this one together for sure.
Yeah. And when we talk more about the art of this today, Wendy and I will tell you that we use a lot of these skills and some different skills, but we never get away from the science of training. So this is not as a replacement. It is an addition to. But we want to talk to the other side of the ledger, in a sense, of the soft skills or these other skills that truly will elevate you in combination with the NASM model. And then you're going to be truly unstoppable.
Unstoppable.
Right.
Marty, I'll talk about, if you
ahead.
want, just kind of bring in the introduction, because I know some of the beginning slides, you're going to probably have to elaborate a little more, especially with one of the books. However, we are live today as well, guys. So if you have questions for Marty and I as we go through the content, please be sure to put it in the comments, and we will try to get to those questions before the end of our talk today. But we are going to talk about the science, just like you said, Marty. I mean, the science is the easy part. You have all the reference materials. You have as much data as you need when it comes to designing a program and having a rationale for exactly why you're doing what you're doing. But to Marty's point, do you have the people skills? Just because you can talk the book smart, people don't really care about that. They want to have a little bit more. And that's what this whole thing's going to be about. But then we're going to teach you how to grow on all areas of just personal development, because these skills that we talk about today isn't just what you should be doing with your clients, but hopefully with your friends and your family and everyone. So I think it was very well thought out.
No, I'm excited about this. And this is 20 some years in development of doing this and being around some of the greatest minds, great mentors. So these are things that we've talked about in other podcasts. But, first and foremost, I think it's always important for us to judge and evaluate our own emotional intelligence. And sometimes you can look at that as, can you read the room? Can you read the person? Do you know when to talk, when to listen, what to say, how to say it, not making things about you, all of these little things where before you even get into the true science of it, I am sure there's people in your life that you've connected with and you feel better after you spend some time with them. And you've heard the comment like, yeah, they just get it. Well, that's emotional intelligence. That's knowing how to say things, when to say it, or how to, or not to say things and when not to say things. So the definition there is emotional social intelligence is an array of interrelated emotional and social competencies and skills that will determine how effectively an individual can understand and express themselves, understanding others and relate with them, and cope with the daily demands, challenges, and pressures. So this comes down to you're training somebody and another person rushes up to you and tries to grab your attention. How do you deal with that person plus your client? How do you deal with the client that, quote unquote, might be not motivated, or fill in the blank? It's just having that ability to be a chameleon and mold your personality to the situation and the person in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfectly said. Reading the room. I like that because it is the short and easy way. I know many of you guys have gone out places where you're talking about something, someone interrupts you and starts talking about themselves or something that has nothing to do with the conversation that we started with, where it was just kind of rudely interrupted. And then no one really cares because it's just about that one particular person. So always think about this too. And I always say this, and Marty, I know you have a very strong feeling with this as well. When somebody is purchasing a personal training session and they are asking for your 1 hour or 30 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever they're paying for, you are 100% supportive of that individual, of making sure that it's a good program, they're safe, but then also that you have that communication throughout, whether it's queuing. You know, a lot of times people like to talk just about what's going on in their life. I usually have them do that before and or after when you're foam rolling or cooling down so we can focus on the task at hand. But remember, it's not about you and it's not about what's going on in your life. You have your friends and your family to discuss that when it's not during a paid session. So even though you have really good relationships and especially over time, they almost become your family, just always keep that in mind. You listen to them, you be supportive. It's almost like we're their therapist. And I know we're going to talk about that too. But I think this is also where that emotional intelligence comes into play.
Without question. So here, there's a lot of things you can look up under emotional intelligence. We're not promoting one versus the other. This is just the one that I've used. And you can take a quiz online and it'll help really kind of score your emotional intelligence. So another, when you look at the definition, ability to, for somebody to identify, understand, and manage their own emotions, right? Not making it about you, or being able to control how you may be feeling depending on the environment and the emotions of others around them. So this is, kind of a benchmark to me where you should start off, just kind of check in and see where you're at. And if you even sharpen your skills slightly in this, you might be shocked how much better your business goes.
So I love this picture, Marty. And that is pretty much how I feel often throughout my day. But when we talk about behavior change theory, you want to think, before considering specific techniques to improve adherence, you as the trainer need to understand this behavior change theories and how it's going to help you exercise adherence. That is equally important as the delivery of the relationship with the fitness professional and what you're building with your client. So in other words, it's not only what fitness professionals are saying, but it's how they're saying it. Because I can say, oh my goodness, you're doing so great. Like, look at this. And they can see the excitement, or, oh yeah, that looks great. Look at that. I mean, you can tell one's sarcastic and one is I'm really excited and heartfelt about whatever it is that they're doing. So how it comes across, your way of presenting the content or emotion to your client, even if you're having a bad day, you put that aside because it really is about the way that you deliver your information. And I mean, it'd be the same thing if we were on a podcast and it was just very monotone and we didn't put some exciting pictures and hopefully some inflections in our voices. Over time, you'd just be falling asleep. Even though the content's great, I think the delivery is just as important.
And I purposely put a long pause in there because sometimes, as Wendy's probably like, is he going to talk? Sometimes even having those pauses and, again, getting people's attention. So we could even put that into public speaking. But the other thing is, I would say, be careful with feedback, like positive versus negative. I didn't put a slide in there per se on that, but I did the research when I was doing my doctorate. People don't respond to negative feedback like, I'll call it, without naming names, the biggest loser concept, where you're yelling at people and screaming at people. It doesn't go as far as you think it may. Temporarily, it may motivate somebody, but most people in the gym are watching that, and that's why they're choosing not to train with you. All of these things come into that body language, what you're saying, all that. So you're going to go much farther with positivity, good postures and things like that. And when we taught live courses, where to stand, where not to stand, touching people, not touching people, and then using, positive motivation more than a negative motivation strategy.
100%. I want to know that I'm doing good. And that actually brings us to the slide when we're talking about doing well. How am I communicating with my clients? Because like I said, the way that you talk to someone and the way that you treat them, you are critically building a foundation for positive, or like a positive relationship. And so when you think about this, what we're striving to do is, of course, we have to create a safe environment when where challenging and emotional issues can be discussed. If something is going wrong with someone, something's happening in their lives and it's actually affecting what they're doing on the floor, or maybe they didn't get any sleep because of something going on, they need to be able to come to you and talk to you about these things, no matter how personal it may be or how specific. Because at the end of the day, if I don't know this and I'm putting them through a phase 5 workout, because that's basically where they are, I could give them something to do that their body can't handle, and it may not be safe, and it could increase their chances of injury. So it doesn't make sense for anyone. So you need to make sure in the very beginning that you can be open, or they can be open with you. And oftentimes when you're sitting down for the very first time with this client, you have to make them feel comfortable. And it's important for you to reiterate that, like how important that one statement is. I need to know daily how you are, and you have to be able to tell me. I think it's also too, cell phones. Marty has heard me when I have taught workshops. It is one of my biggest pet peeves. Put your cell phone away. Put it away. It is not about your cell phone. Okay. So once again, they are paying for you to train them. And if you as the trainer have your cell phone and you're looking at Instagram, or you're like texting with someone, that is not professional whatsoever. However, I will say there was one time that when my mom was really sick, we were waiting for some test results. And I told my clients from the very beginning, I have my phone in my pocket. If it rings and it's my father, I really need to take it. However, I will comp your session. And so it was one of those things. I needed to do it. And unfortunately, I didn't know when that call was going to come. And luckily it didn't happen throughout any of my sessions, but that is the only time I ever had my phone with me. And so I think it's really important to focus on the client, not what's on your phone. Also, to make sure that when the client or person is talking to you and they ask a question, that you understand what they're asking. I think that's another thing. Sometimes you're speaking ahead of them even finishing their question, and you're answering something that wasn't even the question to begin with. So be careful with that. And I know we do have a slide specifically on that. And then understanding too, if you're sitting there with your arms crossed and you're looking around the room and it looks like you'd rather be somewhere else, that body language and that cueing, you don't want to be there. And so how does that make the client feel? They're paying all this money to come see you and you want to be somewhere else. So I think all of it, too, understanding the client, being empathetic when needed, validate what they're doing and why they're doing it, and that they're good at whatever it is that they're doing. But those little distractions, oh my gosh, Marty, they go a long way.
Yeah, there's without a question. For those of you just joining in on the Master Instructor Roundtable today, I'm Marty Miller here with Wendy Batts, and we're talking about the art of training. So we're kind of taking away from the science today, going more into the art and the skills that make a great personal trainer. So all those things are very well said, Wendy, and clear communication with your clients, but you are there to focus on them. And one of the ones that I was thinking about when I created this slide, I said this to somebody once, and it kind of stopped them in their tracks. They were talking about kind of like, I got a client towards the end of the day, 5 o'clock. And they were just kind of, just really stressed about how tired they are and this, that, the other. And they've been training since 6. And I said, do you charge the same at 6 a.m. as you do 5 p.m.? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, I can tell you're going to give them 80% of your effort. So why don't you give them a 20% discount? And they're like, well, why would I do that? I'm like, well, because you're cheating them otherwise. And you can see they're like, oh my God, I never thought about that. Like, so if you're going to take clients from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., everybody deserves you at your best. Plan accordingly. And, you wouldn't want to be paying $100 an hour and get someone's 80% because you didn't book a session at 2 o'clock when you couldn't get there.
Yeah. Marty, you heard me many a times in the morning. I think you guys have heard Marty and I talk on the phone when I'm driving in to see some clients at, I have to start at 6 a.m. and Marty's already up foam rolling and doing his stretching and his corrective exercises. So we discuss a lot of these different topics and things. And I might say I'm exhausted, like I had a long night or I was grading papers or whatever it is. But you better believe when I walk in that door and I see my client, it's, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you. How do you feel? How was this, that, and the other?
Right.
For that reason. So you put your feelings and all the emotional stuff to the side and you just need to be all cheery.
Exactly right. And, I really like this slide, not because of Yoda, because it would show my age, but I think the empathy part comes in very important here. The ability to identify with another person's feelings, attitudes, or thoughts. And I could have put this in here. I just looked up sympathetic because there's a little difference between empathetic and sympathetic. So when we look at, and sometimes I think people get confused. So with sympathetic, it's feeling, showing, or expressing sympathy. He was sympathetic towards, but I think the key thing here is being original and authentic. And you've got to be very, very careful. And this is a perfect example. If I'm dealing with a client who has weight loss goal, I can never, ever say, I understand. No, I don't. I've never done it. I've never had to do it. I can say, I appreciate you being honest. I'm going to help you work towards. But if I have never had to achieve that goal, how can I say, well, I can understand? Well, I can't. And some people, they may not know that I didn't have to lose weight in my past, but it's just really being careful with your words. Now, if somebody is a hard gainer and wants to gain size, I fully understand how you feel. And this is why I focus on this. And this is why I've chosen to do this, because that is my life story. So just be careful with that. You can build empathy without just using blank generic terms like, oh, I understand. Just make sure if you use that phrase that you have a story to back that up. And then clearly rapport is just getting to know people at their level, where they're at, how they like to be communicated with, and just having that good bond with them at a professional level.
Mm-hmm. And I think both of those, you start to learn a little bit about the person too, right from the start. So you kind of know what their triggers are. So with that empathy side, I think it's important when you ask those questions, so you kind of know what their struggles are, and obviously why they came in to see you. However, the rapport is just a relationship. This is how I'm going to communicate. This is what I really want you to do on your own. These are my expectations to help you achieve your goals. That is the rapport, like you said, just being able to identify the differences, but still, understanding too, you can be empathetic with someone, but at the same time, you still want to make sure that they're reaching their goals. So somebody might say, oh, I was having a really bad night and I decided just to sit down, and I'm an emotional eater and I had all of these cookies and all this milk. That's okay. I feel sorry that you had a bad night. I'm so sorry to hear that, but that's not okay. Like, we need to find other coping mechanisms and in order for you to reach that weight loss goal. So those are some of the differences on that approach, because that will happen. And so how you handle that definitely is important.
No question. So I think the picture says everything here, right? Nonverbal and verbal communication. So Wendy, your son is still sweet and around 8 years old. Give it a couple more years. I think the eye roll starts right around age 12 to 13. They just start spinning in the head a little bit. So, we all know what a good eye roll looks like. So, when you had touched on this earlier, but nonverbal versus verbal communication, body language, how even tones of voice. So nonverbal communication is that exchange of information through bodily cues other than words, and it can obviously have a profound impact on social interactions. So sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. You know what I mean? It represents that many ways in which humans can communicate. We know that nonverbal communication is over 92%, right? So verbal is only 8%. So they both can happen at the same time. Obviously, they can include posture, hand gestures, proximity. Be careful about proximity for sure. There's some really close talkers, and that can really stop someone from paying attention. And then, of course, the facial expressions. And as we go through here, verbal communication is incredibly important, is part of information that's conveyed by speaking in a professional setting. Wendy, you and I had to film ourselves, watch ourselves teach for NASM, because that's even a part of it. Do you stay put? Do you turn, right? Do you do something with your hand? All of those things can be distracting, or they can blend into or build up a better communicator for someone, because they are engaging and changing tones of voices, purposely pausing at times, right? So all these things are very impactful and important. And the key thing is you want the message received and interpreted correctly, right? And the listener obviously needs to clarify what they have heard from the speaker. And in turn, the speaker needs to confirm that the listeners heard correctly. So even phrasing that right. I learned this one time. And Wendy, I've said this to you before. And when we're instructors, it's like, I'm never now going to get in front of a group of 100 people and say, does that make sense? Because what does that imply? That implies that I explained it well enough And if you didn't follow it, I will go back and do it again. Right? Now, a lot of people don't pick that up initially, but what I should say is, have I explained myself clearly? Do you need me to explain it in more detail? I'm taking the ownership and responsibility, saying, if you don't understand that, that's on me. But Wendy, how many times do we people, professional speakers, go, does that make sense? Any questions? No questions. Great, we're good.
Well, to that point too, Marty, if you say, does that make sense? And it doesn't, you're not going to get a hand raised and say, I'm sorry, Marty, I didn't understand that. Can you just go over this one thing again? Because I'm really unsure what you meant by. And so then you've lost that student or that person that came into the workshop that really was there to learn from you because of the way that you asked that question. And I think it took someone pointing that out, because you and I both did that, Marty, in the very beginning. Does that make sense? Okay, let's move on. Well, no, it didn't. And it took someone that was our mentor saying, well, they talked about something over our head and we looked like deer in headlights. And they're like, doesn't that make sense? And I'm like, not really. But I also knew this person, so I could say, not really. And they're like, imagine if you didn't know me, what would you do? And I wouldn't have said anything.
Less likely.
Words.
Little details.
Well, reflective listening. Sometimes people use their words imperfectly to express what they're trying to communicate. Unfortunately, I am one of those people sometimes. But when you're thinking about reflective listening, this involves taking or making a best guess as to what the speaker means and stating it back to the speaker for confirmation. And I think that's great, because I personally think that I hear something, but I want to make sure that I'm clear. So I may say, Marty, excuse me, I have a question. You had said blah, 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 blah. And what I think in my own personal way, what you meant was this, that, and the other. And then Marty can confirm or deny. Well, you're almost right, Wendy. Again, he's not going to say, nope, you're wrong. He's going to say, well, you know what? You're on the right track, but look at it this way. And there's other ways to provide that information without saying what, So again, when you look at this figure, if you guys are listening to it and don't see it, number one was what speaker means. Like, what am I trying to say? And then what the speaker says. But then what do you hear as the listener? And then what do you hear based on what you think I said? So basically, what am I saying to you? Do you understand that? And I think that little box and figure really is important, because I might think I'm crystal clear, but then if I have a bunch of deer in headlights looking at me, I know that there's also a disconnect.
Yep. No, it's real clear. Once you get in the habit of these, it's very simple to continue to utilize these strategies. So active listening, right? So most people think that good listening involves not talking. When other people are talking, making appropriate facial gestures and repeating back what people have said. Active listening, on the other hand, is about having an attitude of genuine interest in seeking a client's perspective and then understanding it at a deeper level. So active listening does require an individual to pay attention, suspend any internal dialogue, right? Seek to understand before seek to being understood, right? Avoid distractions, look the speaker in the eye, and provide feedback at appropriate times. So with your client, yes, you may know what they're going to say. Yes, you may already have your answer, but be an active listener. That's why you don't want your cell phone. Don't kick things, Wendy. That's not good.
That was my knee, y'all. Sorry.
It's all right. You're just keeping me on my toes.
I know.
I was actively listening to what happened over there. So then, being able to repeat it and being able to say, Wendy, if I'm following you correctly, again, I'm putting the ownership on me. Wendy, if I'm following you correctly, what you're telling me is you truly came in to, and then fill in the blank, right? So that, again, that removes any type of confusion, and it shows that you're really paying attention to that client at that time.
100%. So today on the Master Instructor Roundtable, I am Wendy Batts, here with my friend and colleague, as always, Dr. Marty Miller. And today we are talking about a topic that is near and dear to both of our hearts, but Marty brings up very often. We're talking about the art of personal training, not just the science, which again, that goes unsaid. We always put that number one, but this should be just as important. And I think too, Marty, when we talk about the next part of it, having the closed-ended and the open-ended questions. Remember, when you first meet a client, we start to build rapport. That's the big part of it. But you're also finding out the information that you need, and we call that subjective information. So it's important that you ask specific questions. So therefore, they're going to be comfortable with you as their trainer. You have very clear expectations of what their goals are, and then you can lay out in your mind how you see their program going over a certain amount of time. But then there's also different types of questions that you need to ask. Some that are just going to be very just cut yes and no, and other ones where you need them to elaborate. So if it is a yes and no, we call that more of a closed-ended question, meaning that it's typically a one-word answer. And, they can be very important, but then you can maybe also give you an ability to take that question further into an open-ended question. Like, Marty, are you on this, that, and the other? And he may say yes. Well, do you mind telling me why? So do you see the difference? Now he's got to open up and tell me something that maybe I wouldn't have known about his medical history that wasn't documented anywhere. And so it's very important because it also allows the trainer to get the information, but then it requires the client to think about the more complex answer versus, and that's also helping with that rapport, right? They're trusting and talking to you. You're collaborating with the relationship. You're inviting an open discussion. And I think that's really important. So again, you might think about how might you go about making this change when you're thinking about these questions. What challenges do you see and how can you plan to overcome these questions? What work are you prepared to do to reach your goal? What have you tried in the past to reach your goals that maybe didn't work? Find all of this stuff out, because again, that's only going to help your relationship, and it takes you that much further as a trainer to help your client be successful.
Yeah, great points. I don't need to belabor this. I think the key thing is to understand when to use either, and just to kind of understand if you're not good at one or the other, and practice them up a little bit and you'll see a change. So affirmations. So I already talked about this earlier. We got the drill sergeant here. So affirmations, they show appreciation for clients and their strengths. Fitness professionals must listen carefully to know what to affirm. Now, I'm going to pause here. Maybe this is just me being a male. I am very cautious, but I've done the research too. I rarely, if ever, do any affirmations about how somebody looks, because I don't know their triggers. And as a male to a potential female client, I don't want to ever slip up on a word. My intentions would never be to make somebody feel uncomfortable. So I'm not going to be like, hey, Wendy, you look amazing today. That might be inappropriate to her. I don't know. What I would say is, Wendy, you've come to your last 6 workouts with the best energy and effort I've ever seen. Wendy, we hit a new record on whatever. Wendy, that's amazing that you keep getting here 10 to 15 minutes early to do your foam rolling. You know how important that is. Like, those are affirmations I feel very comfortable with, things like that, positive statements, but I don't go towards somebody's physical look. I could say, Wendy, it's amazing. We just redid your measurements and you've X, Y, and Z, but I'm not putting an opinion in. So that's my personal take on that. So take that for what it's worth. It's not that I have literature or science on that, but I am cautious in that professional realm. And, I just walk that fine line. So, before I turn back over to Wendy here, I'll read this. So they're positive statements about the client's character strengths and are different than compliments. A compliment would be a statement, I think you are working really hard at this. And then you put attention onto the fitness professional, not the client. Affirmation, you paid very close attention to the technique today, right? So you're talking about what they've accomplished, and you're showing that they're checking boxes, as I like to say. And again, I'm going to do them in a positive way. So Wendy, I'm sure you've got some thoughts and feedback on that as well.
No, I mean, I know that that's how I would prefer it as well, because I don't know, even as a female, I don't know what I might say. Oh, Marty, your legs look great. They're nice and lean. And you're like, I'm trying to bulk out and make them gigantic. And so I'm trying to give a positive compliment to him. However, I didn't know that was a trigger because he wants to be big and bulky. And so, there's different ways of looking at it. There might be struggles that someone has that they're not willing to share just in their own personal life. I know there's, some people have body dysmorphia. I do at times as well. I mean, it's just common. There's certain things you love about yourself and certain things you wish you could change, and maybe some things you can and some things you can't. So it's just always great to put it on the client of what's going on, but also being very specific on how you're delivering that content or compliment, actually.
Totally agree. Safe is always good. So Wendy, I know we could have talked about this topic forever, and, we never mind coming back and revisiting these. So we'll give you our contact information here shortly. So please, these podcasts are about you. Like, we enjoy the comments and the content and creating them, but we really are going to go down a path that you request, because we're here to build you and your careers and your skills. So the key thing, don't only focus on the science, right? We're science-minded people. That's always going to be there. But every so often, you should have something over on the other side of the ledger, as I said earlier, that's helping build your skills outside of the science, business, marketing, emotional intelligence, etc. I'm going to challenge you. Have you studied emotional intelligence? And you should take an online quiz. You'll find plenty for free. Are you a good listener and communicator? Well, that's not for you to decide. Ask the people around you, and you might be shocked. But if you do emotional intelligence first, you're not going to get upset when they tell you the truth. So do them in that order, please. And then continue to develop both the science and the art of training. And this career is going to give you incredible opportunities. It's built everything that I have been able to experience in my career. And I've got a new textbook that just showed up today on neurochemistry. That's where I'm heading. So it's always something to learn.
Yeah, I don't have that. So if you guys, as Marty said, if you have questions about what we talked about, always feel free to contact us via Instagram. You can message me at wendy.batts13, or you can email me at wendy.batts@nasm.org.
Awesome. My stuff will be right up here on cue. dr.martymiller72 for Instagram, and then my email, marty.miller@nasm.org.
Well, Marty, nice job today. When you said you wanted to do that, I'm like, oh, there you go. That actually makes sense, because I couldn't believe we haven't done anything on this. So practice. I know I need to practice sometimes too. I start talking way ahead of how I'm thinking, because I just talk fast. So
I've been there. So thanks again, Wendy, for all your contributions. And for all of you that joined us today, we can never thank you enough. And of course, we look forward to seeing you next week on the Master Instructor Roundtable.